Welcome to the most exciting part of your week, the F1 News Roundup. This week, we have news from the Australian Grand Prix and many more intriguing stories. The Australian Grand Prix had everything a racing fan could ask for and more. Max Verstappen started from pole position and won the Australian Grand Prix, but that only tells half the story of a chaotic, drama-filled race in Melbourne. However, that's not all, as the return of a controversial figure to the F1 paddock had tongues wagging and social media buzzing. Additionally, whispers of Vettel's potential comeback to the F1 grid have set the rumour mill spinning. So get ready to experience all the thrills and spills of Melbourne as we bring you the highlights of this unforgettable race and the latest F1 news. Let's begin with how things went down in Australia. Max Verstappen started in pole position, but a poor start saw him lose the lead to George Russell, who impressively took control of the race at turn 1. Lewis Hamilton then muscled his way past Verstappen at turn 3 to take second place, while Charles Leclerc's Ferrari spun out of the race after contact with Lance Stroll as he attempted to pass the Aston Martin around the outside of turn 3. The Monegasque ended up beached in the outside gravel trap, ending his race after just 3 corners. The race went green on lap 4 with Russell leading Hamilton, Verstappen, Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso. However, the excitement was short-lived as Alex Albon crashed out heavily at turn 7, bringing out the safety car once again. Russell pitted for fresh hard tyres, dropping down to 7th and allowing Hamilton to take the lead. Verstappen followed closely behind, with Alonso and Stroll not far behind. Just as the race started to heat up again, the FIA red flagged the race to clean up gravel and debris from the track, ruining the strategies of Russell and Sainz, who had just pitted. After a second standing start, Hamilton led the way, but Verstappen quickly overtook him with the help of DRS. The restart was chaotic as 4 cars retired from collisions. That led to a half-hour waiting game to see how the Grand Prix would restart. Carlos Sainz tapped Fernando Alonso exiting turn 1, sending the Aston Martin spinning as chaos unfolded behind them. Logan Sargent hit the back of Nick de Vries while Pierre Gasly went off at turn 2, and as he rejoined the grid, he and teammate Esteban Ocon collided. So the red flags came out for a third time, but the previous restart grid order was used, given that the drivers had not finished the first sector. A safety car rolling restart was used, and that was that. Verstappen emerged victorious, and everyone had something to say about the race's end. Sainz, though, was dealt a 5-second penalty, which dropped him to P12. Sainz wasn't happy with the penalty and saw it as unfair. Alonso also reckoned the punishment did not fit the crime, saying, "Probably the penalty is too harsh. On lap 1 of a restart, it is very difficult always to judge the grip level, and I think we don't go intentionally into another car, We also risk our car and final position, so sometimes we end up in places where we wish you were not there at that moment. It's just part of racing. I didn't see the replay properly, but for me, it feels too hard." What a race! With crashes, collisions and red flags galore, the Australian Grand Prix had it all. F1 fans are sure to be buzzing for days to come, reliving the unforgettable moments of this thrilling race. Let's take a look at the red flag controversies. Were they the right decisions? The Australian GP's unprecedented third grid start on lap 57 of 58 had similar potential to spice up a straightforward race in which Max Verstappen led comfortably. Instead, it turned the whole affair into a farce. Cold tyre temperatures and low sun hindering visibility didn't help drivers, but it didn't excuse some of the driving standards. Esteban Ocon called some of the moves into turn 1 a bit suicidal, as the eagerness only led to incidents that yielded yet another red flag. Ocon said there's a lot to gain at that time, a little bit too much for some drivers. The drivers weren't impressed. McLaren's Lando Norris said, "I feel like you ruined a lot of things. The McLaren driver thought it was unfair to create such jeopardy for the drivers so close to the finish. He said it just caused a bad end to the race." Yuki Tsunoda called it a waste of time. Verstappen argued for a rolling start and maybe a safety car. He also contested the need for a red flag, which wiped away his healthy lead. It wouldn't have been a post-race talking point had all the drivers gotten through safely. Instead, we'd be hailing how great Tsunoda was to make up places in his sluggish AlphaTauri, or how exciting the Hamilton-Alonso fight for P2 was. When done badly, like on Sunday, it can prove incredibly costly, and by causing another red flag and then sets the results back to what they were, this one felt like a total waste of time for fans. Verstappen may have kept his cool at the front through the red flag restarts, yet he was unimpressed by the decision to throw the second red flag in reaction to Magnussen's crash, which set up the chaotic third standing start. Verstappen said, "I don't think we needed that second red flag. I think if you would have had a safety car and then just have a normal rolling start, we wouldn't have had all these shunts, and then you would have a normal finish." Despite the controversy, Brundle does not believe the FIA threw the red flag to whiz up more fun, but primarily for the safety of the drivers and fans in attendance. Absolutely not. I don't think there was any instruction to whiz this show up when required. You have to walk a mile in the shoes of the people who are responsible. It is easy for us to sit on the sidelines going, should have done this, should have done that. Back in 2009, Felipe Massa nearly died with a piece of someone else's car coming through his cockpit. It is also a street circuit there with a lot of fans on either side of the track and also marshals and medics that are down there. Brundle continued, so if there are pieces of debris on the track, you can't have them flying through the air at a couple hundred miles per hour. I thought when Alex Albon went off, they could perhaps have just used a safety car and swept the gravel up and cleared the car away. A red flag perhaps seems slightly unnecessary, but towards the end of the race, we had a tyre and wheel on the track and lots of debris. I am absolutely confident no one is in there going, hey, let's make this a little bit more fun. Whether we are making crystal clear decisions under the pressure of the moment, obviously we lost Charlie Whiting in Melbourne where he died sadly. Then we went through the Michael Massey phase, which everyone knows about, especially Abu Dhabi 2021. Talking about Michael Massey, the former F1 race director is back in the F1 paddock. The former F1 race director was at the Australian Grand Prix primarily in his new role as the chairman of the Supercars Commission. This marked his return to the paddock for the first time since the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Massey parted ways with the FIA amid the fallout from that explosive race that saw Max Verstappen crowned world champion over Lewis Hamilton in a controversial fashion. Speaking about his return to the F1 paddock in Melbourne, Massey said it has been a warm welcome. He said it's been fantastic being back as a guest of both the FIA and Formula One. It's been really good. I'm here in my capacity as the chair of the Supercars Commission, but it's lovely to catch up with so many good friends and see so many people, including my old team at the FIA. Hamilton was asked about Massey's return during the Thursday press conference, specifically whether he had any interest in speaking with him about Abu Dhabi. The 7-time world champion said, I don't. I'm just focusing on my future, focused on trying to get back to winning. Nothing to say. The Australian GP also saw the reignition of the Hamilton-Alonso rivalry. Hamilton had briefly led the race at Albert Park, taking over at the front at the first red flag, due to teammate George Russell pitting from the lead. But Hamilton was powerless against Verstappen's straight-line speed advantages as the Dutch driver sailed around him. With Alonso hunting down the Mercedes driver, the Spaniard was able to close the gap to below 2 seconds as he tried to get within DRS range of his former teammate. In the middle of the race, Sky F1 suggested that Hamilton had taken to the team radio to say, there's no way I'm losing to him, which could have been seen as being in direct response to Alonso's recent comments downplaying the significance of Hamilton's championship victories. But a closer listen to Hamilton's communications with engineer Pete Bonington reveals a very different message. Bono said gap at 1.2 to Alonso 21.7. Hamilton replied, know where I'm losing to him? Bono stated, okay Lewis, stand by. Hamilton said, lots of vibration on the front tyres. Bono responded, copy Lewis, it's something on the rear axle, I'll let you know. Alonso's and Hamilton's rivalry stems back to 2007, Hamilton's rookie season, when they paired up at McLaren, resulting in a hugely dramatic and controversial season that ended in a tie on points and Alonso choosing to leave the team. Last year, the pair had a collision at Spa-Francorchamps, with Alonso blasting Hamilton over team radio for the clash. What an idiot closing the door from the outside. I mean, we had a mega start, but this guy only knows how to drive and start in first. Hamilton refused to engage in a war of words afterward, but the spat appeared to clear up a week later, with Alonso picking up a signed cap from Hamilton in the Belgian Grand Prix paddock. After the Australian GP, Alonso stated, I tried to force a mistake from Lewis all race long. I tried to get close, but he drove fantastically well, as the champion he is, and made no mistakes. Following last weekend's Australian Grand Prix, George Russell is convinced that Red Bull are yet to show their full potential, with the Mercedes driver having accused the Austrians of sandbagging. Verstappen ultimately breezed his way back to the front, with Lewis Hamilton having once again been left in shock at how quick the RB19 was. It left Russell certain that Red Bull are still holding back and are perhaps even embarrassed to show just how fast they can go. The Mercedes driver said, for sure they're holding back. I think they are almost embarrassed to show their full potential because the faster they seem, the more the sport is going to try and hold them back somehow. I think realistically, they probably have a 7/10 advantage over the rest of the field. I don't know what the pace difference looks like at the moment, but Max has got no reason to be pushing it, nor is Red Bull. They've done a really great job to be fair to them. We can't take that away, and we clearly have to up our game. Sebastian Vettel has hinted at a possible F1 comeback just months after calling time on his career in the sport. The 35-year-old won 4 consecutive F1 world titles with Red Bull and spent the last 2 years of his career racing for Aston Martin. In a recent interview, Vettel said everything is possible at the moment. It can go in all different possible directions. It's also possible that in 6 months I'll go crazy. I can't stand it on the couch and want to drive again. But it's also possible that my passion will go in a completely different direction, turns and my ambition to be able to bundle all the experiences into another project. Now over to you. Do you agree with Russell that Red Bull are sandbagging? Let us know in the comment section below. That's the end of this week's Roundup. Subscribe so you don't miss next week's Roundup.